Senator Bernie Sanders' former campaign manager from 2016, Jeff Weaver, is creating a super PAC. This super PAC is apparently supposed to get Bernie Sanders supporters to support Joe Biden. Yes, so now this super PAC, as I said, was created to persuade Sanders supporters to turn out for Biden in November, according to a report from the New York Times. Now, that has, of course, prompted some strong reactions from former Sanders campaign workers and supporters. I mean, look, there's so many things that is wrong with this. But first, let me go here to a quote from Weaver. He said, "Because of the strength of the progressive movement, we together have moved the Democratic Party in the national debate. All that success, however, means little if we don't elect the candidates we have pushed to be more progressive." Now, where has Biden been more progressive? I mean, he kind of adopted sort of maybe Elizabeth Warren's plan on higher education. By the way, going back on a problem that he created. Remember, Joe Biden made it so that you cannot declare bankruptcy from student loans. You still have to pay them even if you declare bankruptcy. So that was something that Joe Biden did. So now he's like, oh, yeah, my bad. I'm going to reverse that. Oops. And then did some form of student loan forgiveness, not cancellation, but forgiveness. So the way that I understand that works is that cancellation zeroes out the debts. Whereas forgiveness, the government will then pay itself because that's who loaned out the money. And this is, of course, for federal loans. It will pay itself, which counts as income on your taxes, which then, depending on how much the government forgives, can place you into an incredibly high tax bracket. So you exchange owing the government for student loans into owing the government for back taxes. Not really a great plan. So I don't know where Jeff Weaver is saying, oh, no, the Joe Biden, more progressive. I also don't know where Bernie Sanders is saying, and one of his reasons that was reported for him bowing out, at least one that is given publicly, is, well, I mean, he was successful at pushing Joe Biden to the left on some issues that he's more comfortable with giving his endorsement. Look, I love Bernie Sanders. This is not meant to trash him. I think he's, would have been an amazing president and was a great, great leader, figurehead for the progressive movement. But this ain't it. Ain't it. Sorry. But I'm a policy voter, and most Bernie Sanders supporters followed Bernie Sanders because of the policy, not because of the person. There's the whole idea of not me, us, kind of the whole point of the progressive movement. And the movement has existed before Bernie. It will exist for long after Bernie. And so I don't like this whole idea of a super PAC. And by the way, speaking of Bernie Sanders didn't like it either. In fact, Sanders is, quote, not supportive of the PAC based on his opposition to super PACs in general. And he said he, quote, certainly would prefer we had not done it through a super PAC. So Bernie Sanders is even against this. So now, who's on this PAC? Well, Weaver is joined by former Sanders campaign staffers Chuck Rocha, Tim Tagaris, Shelley Jackson, and Mark Longbaugh. So a lot of those people are consultants. And some of those, ideas from some of these consultants, campaign strategy, not great. In fact, you had people inside the Sanders campaign that told Bernie, don't be aggressive on Biden. Don't be aggressive against Biden. And look, Bernie Sanders himself considers Joe Biden to be a friend. And so he didn't go aggressive against Biden. And I think perhaps if he had, maybe Super Tuesday might have turned out a little bit differently, or maybe there would have been nothing that we could do, nothing that the campaign could have done to fight against the entire establishment. We really have no idea. We just have no idea. But, fair criticism, right? So now the PAC was, of course, met with condemnation. Here's People for Bernie founder Winnie Long saying this: "You are not obligated to support this effort. In fact, you should condemn it. It is unconscionable to support Joe Biden in this moment." And then, of course, cited Tara Reade's sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden. Now, what's interesting about that, of course, is that there's been new corroborating evidence to show that, yes, she was indeed sexually assaulted by Joe Biden, or at least she has told people. And yet the Biden campaign is still using a New York Times article that doesn't actually, or a New York Times investigation that didn't actually take any of this evidence into consideration. Not only that, but they've also used information from very dubious Krasenstein brothers in order to make their case against Tara Reade. So I'm just saying, I wouldn't really trust the New York Times in this. It's not as if they didn't work with the Biden campaign on messaging. I mean, not exactly a neutral publication. All right. So now, anyway, another Sanders ally, former campaign surrogate Jamal Green, also called out Weaver for blocking his efforts to reach out to black voters during the campaign. Tweeting, quote, "When they shut down efforts in Mississippi, basically giving up the effort to black voters, Weaver did that. Weaver made Bernie lose twice." And of course, Jamal Green goes on a very long social media tangent about Weaver and about the failures of the campaign. And so, look, I don't know. I wasn't in the campaign, obviously. I don't know, but I have heard a lot of stories where the campaign was ineffective in states, for example, like South Carolina, where there are people that were asking for campaign resources for people to come to the state and campaign more and all that stuff, and were rebuffed. And so not every campaign, of course, is perfect. And I actually am not going to blame Bernie Sanders specifically for that. There were people in his campaign that were less than effective, but what's done is done. And what's important now is how we actually further the movement or further the goals of the movement, which is to get policy. And I'm sorry, but launching a super PAC, because that's what progressives, well, we definitely want to see a super PAC, guys. Right. No, launching a super PAC to get us to vote for Biden, not going to really be effective, especially since one of the parts of being a progressive is being against money in politics to begin with. So I don't see how at all this is going to be effective. And I am happy to see that Bernie Sanders has disavowed this and said, "I'm not comfortable with this at all." Because you know what? A lot of us progressives feel the exact same way. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.